Tonight on Special Assignment, the human toll of South Africa's gold mine industry. Thousands of former mine workers return home from the gold fields, penniless and broken. Sick with an incurable lung disease, the former miners made history last year.
I hand down the judgment.
A landmark High Court decision certified South Africa's first ever class action, paving the way for sick former gold mine workers to sue the entire gold mine industry as a group for compensation.
If you start thinking about all the miners that worked on gold mines from 1965 up to now, we're talking about thousands of miners.
But the companies are now challenging this before the Supreme Court of Appeal, while time is running out for the sick men and their desperate families. Tonight, just weeks ahead of the Supreme Court's decision that will determine the future of the case, Special Assignment brings you the heart-wrenching stories of the wives and daughters who are left with the burden of caring for these sick men.
Livingstone now. Ndaqala ngo-73 emine farms. Ndandibona ngathi lona cala la undikhawulezela kwiminqweno yam. Bendiyazi okugula ke ndingakwazi ukuba ndifumene pawuma kodwa ndibanjwe nje igesi qha. Bendisithi ke mna kubo hayi xa ndibanjwe ile gesi kanti ndikhangelele isithuba ke ayisafani nakuqala ngoba ngoku ndiyaziva kukhona iipini ezikhoyo apha uba nalapha ke kukho amanto zangathi ngamadyungudyungu kodwa phaa ngaphakathi sisavakala ngathi ziyahlaba yiyo ndayiphawula noko akusafani nakuqala.
And uziva njani xa ula?
Noko hayi andiziva kamandi ngoba kusukela zange ndayisebenzisa nepilisi kodwa ngokwamuthe kuba ngoku ndibe nepilisi endiyityayo sinkuba ndadibana nesi sigulo.
Impilo yam nomtshato wam uhlukumezeke kakhulu since utata wabuye emigodini. Ekubeni ba utata umkaphesela umuntu omtsha engabikwa hlaba. Ubuya kwakhe ngoku emigodini ulento nimbone yiyo anganawukwazi uzenzela nto.
The Xaba family lives in a small rural village on the outskirts of King Williamstown in the Eastern Cape. Tens of thousands of men from these so-called mine-sending communities were drafted to work hundreds of kilometers away in the gold mines of the Free State and Johannesburg under the apartheid government's migrant labour system. This is a landscape that Patrick Godana knows intimately. He works for the human rights-based organisation Sonke Gender Justice.
So these rural areas were the hub of the mining industry in South Africa. The migrant labor system find its comfort from robbing communities, particularly the rural communities, of men and conscripted them to the mines in Johannesburg. Because of the level of illiteracy as well, you find that people from the rural areas had no option but to go to the mining industry.
Today, Patrick accompanies Sonke's legal advocacy worker, Tabang Pue, to meet with the Xaba family. Mtutuzeli Xaba could be one of thousands of sick former mine workers to receive compensation if South Africa's first precedent-setting class suit action against all the country's gold mine companies proceeds.
And opted to.
We applied to be friends of the court so as to present the expert evidence on the gendered impact of silicosis. Because when these men are finally finished by the mines, sent back home, they are sent back home to wait for their death. And who's going to take care of them? Are women and girls.
Ubomi bam tata, ubomi mandithi ubomi bam nosista bethu bam nosista wam bubutshintshile ngoba asikwazi noyaphi. Tata ndithetha uba kaloku xa utata uyaminceka nasebusuku. Uminceka kwakho umama ke ngulo ungaboniyo yena. Uvusa mna uba noluba balovuka baleka uyobiza umelwane asincede. Ndiyaqhuma ndinjalo andisaboyika ubusuku ndihle apho uyonkqonkqozela umelwane uba melwane nceda vuka. Nantsi sinale ngxaki katata, utata uphinde waxakaniseka ngoku. Ubomi bam tata, mandithi ubomi bam nosista bethu bam nosista wam bubutshintshile ngoba asikwazi noyaphi. Akukwazi noyaphi noba ndithi mandihambe mna ndiyofuna umsebenzi ngoba kukho lo tata, le mpilo katata ngumntana kasista wam lo. Wathi xa esithi athi nolubalo ndidiniwe le meko sikuyo ngoba asisayazi neKrismesi uba kwenzeka ntoni ngeKrismesi. Xa ekhona umntu okubiza ndathi Amanda, xa ekhona umntu okubizayo umntasekhaya hamba, umntana wakho ndikhona. Ewe kakhulu tata, ibuxothile yonke into ngoba mna ndihleli as umama, andiseyiyo intombi apha kweli khaya. Ndihleli as umama, ndiyinto yonke ngoba naphaa kulaa mlilo umama akakwazi usondela for amehlo wakhe. Ndikhusela amehlo wakhe kulaa mlilo. Funeka ibe ndim oya kulaa mlilo, obasa kulaa mlilo, ndiphekele bona, ndibaphakele kutyiwe.
When their husbands left for the mines, they relied on their husbands to provide all the money. Upon returning, the mine workers are too sick to find any other job, and so they, have to seek and find ways in which they can make means for their families. But then this is then complicated by the fact that mine workers, when having silicosis, have to provide full-time care to their partners. And so they're now no longer able to even find part-time jobs like being domestic workers or even working in local farming projects.
This claim is on behalf of the miner and the miner's loss of income or loss of future income or pain and suffering. It's not about the mine workers' dependents' loss of income themselves.
Karina du Plessis works for the Legal Resources Centre, who forms part of several legal teams in the litigation on behalf of the former miners. An important and trailblazing component in this litigation has been the issue of transmissibility of damages.
In South African law, there's this moment during the process of suing someone, which is called litis contestatio. If you die after litis contestatio, then you get your full amount of damages, including pain and suffering. If you die before litis contestatio, then you don't get the pain and suffering. You just get the specific damages. In other words, the loss of income, the loss of future earnings, the medical expenses. In respect of the silicosis class action, what that means is, if you're a member of the class and you die before litis contestatio, then your dependents will get less money than the miners who die after litis contestatio. And we're saying that is fundamentally offensive and against their rights to get damages from the mines.
In our law, it's if the person who's directly affected passes away before a certain stage in the trial, the claim dies with them. And so we are advocating for transmissibility of damages, which means that the claim would move from the deceased mine worker to their family. And we are saying that this is an indirect way of recognizing the family's own right to compensation.
My name is Alice Magala. I'm 24 years old. The name of my late father is Abel Antonio Magala. He was part of the Harmony gold mines during the years of 1958 till 1997. He passed away on 2014 on 5 November. He got sick while he was still working in the mines. I never knew him as a healthy father, like any fathers that work on the street.
Alice Magala and her family live in a township called Meloding on the outskirts of Virginia in the Free State. The Free State forms the heart of the so-called gold fields, another major gold mining hub where huge deposits of gold were discovered as early as 1885. By the 1950s, the mine companies in this area became a leading employer in the province.
We knew he got sick at the mines because his cough, there were no doctors or any hospital that could heal him. He would go at the hospital day and night. He would spend nights at hospitals. He would spend days wanting to go to the doctor, cough all night. My mom will cry for him, because we will see that this person is dying, but we will be helpless.
Alice and her younger sister both had promising futures after getting good marks in matric. But the sisters never managed to finish their tertiary studies and are both now unemployed.
I was at Welcome College doing business management because I wanted to open one of my business one day. That was my dream, to be someone. But then it all vanished.
In many African cultures, the women and young girls are vested with the obligation of caring for those who are sick in the family. Often they have to leave school, they have to leave employment opportunities, and so even in the mining context, when mine workers come back from working in the mines, women and young girls are disproportionately affected, and this information we felt was important to put before the court.
Exactly how many miners were affected by silicosis in South Africa's gold mines is still up for debate. Some estimate it could be as high as 500,000 mine workers, a figure under dispute.
The mines have known about silicosis and the cause of silicosis since the 1800s. Our class is only from 1965 up to certification, but it means that during that time, the mines did not comply with industry standards for dust control. If you start thinking about all the miners that worked on gold mines from 1965 up to now, we're talking about thousands of miners. The affected miners are not just South African miners. The gold mining industry made use of the migrant working system. So we're talking about miners from Lesotho, from Malawi, from Mozambique. We really are talking about a lot of people. This is a grand scale.
I don't think anybody really knows how many workers have contracted silicosis.
Alan Fine, who represents the major mining companies being sued in the litigation, says they believe some of the figures might be exaggerated.
There have been some studies done, but our perspective is that these studies have been carried out among groups of workers particularly exposed to the inhalation of silica dust, so that we think that the way they've extrapolated their findings to the entire history of employees in the industry carry some methodological issues. But yes, the companies are aware that it is a very serious legacy issue, and that is one of the reasons that the working group was established and is doing all of the work that it is doing, including seeking to reach a settlement.
Georgina Jepson is part of the litigation team at Richards Poor Attorneys. The firm has been instrumental in the landmark silicosis class action.
We actually at this stage don't know the figure. It could be as many as 500,000. I doubt it, because I think that a lot of people actually have already passed away. A lot of mine workers have died as a result of silicosis. But definitely tens of thousands of people will be affected by this litigation.
And stakeholders believe the fact that this lung disease is incurable is exactly why the issue of transmissibility of damages in the silicosis case is so crucial.
The High Court has found that the rule that you can only get general damages if you die after litis contestataio is outdated, and they have developed the common law to say that you can inherit general damages as well. That also goes to your estate. So that is quite a huge development in South African law.
My name is Hendrik Mansu Mokoena. I was also an employee in the mines. I also diagnosed with pulmonary tuberculosis. At the time, I was not satisfied about the compensation they gave to me.
Hendrik Mokoena approached Richard Spoor attorneys after he heard about preparations for a possible class action against the mines. Hendrik is now one of the plaintiffs in the landmark case, and Richard Spoor attorneys have since trained him as a paralegal.
The mines are cruel, because I have been in many homes of these sick mine workers. And if you came there, you will find that these people, they are struggling a lot. And those who are deceased, you'll find that their children, they can't even go to school now.
Hendrik's experience as a mine worker in Welkom gives him inside knowledge of the mining communities in the province. He's tasked with assisting plaintiffs and prospective beneficiaries like Alice in the class action.
I think it will have to be pushed with the courts because the mine companies, they don't care about the employees.
But the mine companies want a settlement to be reached out of court.
There are very intensive talks that have been going on for quite some time, since 2015. We are now reaching a position where the working group is hopeful that a settlement will be able to be reached during the course of this year, 2017.
But what about the crucial issue of transmissibility of damages for the dependents of mine workers who have already passed away?
Well, that too will be determined by the settlement that is reached. Obviously, the talks are going on the basis of confidentiality, so we can't talk too much about that.
For affected families, the legal wrangling seems like a ploy to buy time. Alice is now raising a young son, and while she feels the mine companies have robbed her of her future, she says she will not allow her son to walk the same path.
I wouldn't allow him to work at the mines for the fact that I saw how they treated my father and how they ignored him for those long years that he worked for them. But at the end of the day, he turned to be nothing. And he was nothing because he's no longer alive.
Many former mine workers from the 50s through to the 90s, who formed the bulk of the migrant labour force in gold mining regions like Johannesburg and the Free State, have since returned home to these rural areas in the Eastern Cape. Sonke gender justice activist Patrick Godana holds a meeting with some of these former mine workers. None have heard of the groundbreaking Silicosis class action hundreds of kilometres away in Johannesburg, or the significant judgment around the case in coming weeks by the Supreme Court of Appeal in Bloemfontein. Patrick explains what a successful class action could mean for thousands of sick miners and the women and children who cared for them, and also the widows left behind.
Umyeni wam Malixa Duba yena ubesebenza inumber 8 Far Reefs eOkney. Uqale ngo1976. Uqala kwakhe ukugula uqale ngo1987. Waqala wabanesithi uye waphuma emgodini ebanjwe sisifuba. Ndafikelwa ifoni esithi hey andikwazi uphuma apha ebhafini. Ngoku mandikhe ndinyuke ke ndiye ndiyomkroba. Xa ndifika phaya ndiyafika funeke ndimvasa akakwazi uphuma ebhafini.
The couple had to return here to their village in the Eastern Cape. They sold their livestock and spent their last money on doctors' consultations.
Nesisifuba singanyangekiyo qha and ke ngoku imiphunga le yakhe itwinekile kusenowuthini. Masihambe siye ulinde ekhayeni ilanga lakhe lokufa. Kwakubi ke ngoku. Saphuma singayazi uba ngoku saphinda sajika sabuza kulo gqirha uba sithini. Wathi lo gqirha hayi andinakwenza ngakumbi, andizukwenza neleta, andizukwenza nantoni for uba aye esibhedlele ngoba akho nto ndizawuyenza mna.
All the legal teams are really and have been hoping for a settlement, because we recognize that for each day that there isn't a settlement, it means more and more families are living in the type of poverty that we've seen. And so we are really hoping for a settlement so that this process is fast and you can alleviate some of the harms that are continuing. And on the other hand, it's because this is one of the biggest class actions of its kind, it has huge potential to set precedents for other cases and to other companies and private sectors that are doing these kind of violations. And so the potential of having a really good judgment that can affect other cases is also equally important.
Nobekile Duba could possibly become one of thousands of widows of deceased mine workers who died of silicosis if a trust is set up. She shows us her empty fridge. With no money for food, she says she's contemplating selling it, her last valuable asset. She says the family has reached such dire circumstances that a financial settlement with mine companies has become their last hope. Not far from Nobekile Dube's home lives her neighbours, the Jamelas.
Hayi zonke into bezilungile ngela xesha langaphambili. Kungekho nto kuba ke ndifike sebenza apha ezimayini mna. Kwasaqhubekeka ke sanabantwana sinabo. Epheke zompembelezo. Itshintshe imo awube engenampilo ebuye ezimayini. Beye kaloku athoba imali njengoko ephangela ezimayini. Besilime emasimini okokuqala. Sisitya ukulima mbona phantsi. Sazi ba ke ekupheleni konyaka sawube sivunile sizawuthengisa umbona. Uthe ke nje akuphelelwa ngamandla ngenxa yempilo. Namasimi abanjengoba ke ubona uba tata ngoku akukho cingo akukho ntoni. Baqale batshintsha ubomi.
Igama lam ndintshontsho lakhe Jamela. Ntshontsho lakhe Griffiths Jamela. Yaqala usebenza eWest Driefontein ngo-73. Indlela uma nditsala ezimali ndandifuna imali neyoba ndiphindele esikolweni. Kangamanje oba ndisithi ndisebenze usuka 73 ngo-76 ke ndawutrayisha esikolweni futhi. Kodwa ke ndehluleka ndaphindela ezimali ngo-76.
Kukudala simhamisa kugqirha komagciwaphi nasezikliniki ezinikwa izinto zingamncedi. Kulaa gqirha usemthatha owazawuthi yena une-silicosis and then uyibubomi bakhe. Wonke umbilini kuye uphelile. Sangafumane nanto. Wabuyiswa nje qha. Kwawuzabuye kwelaliswe. Ndawumthatha ngokwami. Sehlala emikhukhwini. Uzabe lapha wayothathwa ndim.
Workers who contract silicosis are compensated through an existing statutory system which has been operating for many, many decades. Well, it doesn't happen through the mining companies. There is a statutory fund run through the Department of Health, and it is well known that there have been quite serious administrative deficiencies in that fund.
Stakeholders feel mining companies should step in and take responsibility for thousands of former miners like Njonjulaki Jamela who were sent home sick and empty-handed after working decades in the mines.
The mines itself, they don't look after these people. After being out of the mine, they don't care about you anymore. And some of them who are sick, they are not even paid until now.
All Njonjulake Jamela can do now is wait.
Uba kungaphuma imali ndikwazi uzinyanga.
Andisazi kaloku sikise oko kwathi masizolinda. Kwathi masilinde uba unofana nini.